On the night of September 25th, 1957, residents of a small neighborhood in Joliet, Illinois, heard a woman scream, the slamming of a car door, and the squealing of tires. And then, silence. Chalking it up to teenagers being rowdy, they went back to sleep. The next morning, they'd learn what they actually heard was the kidnapping of 47-year-old newspaper owner Amelia Zelko. But who would want to harm Amelia? It turns out, the list was long. This is the first part of her story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring. This week, we are joined by Taylor Meskimen.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
Vanessa, we don't have much time to chit-chat. We have to get into our episode. But you know how much I love when our episodes cover difficult women.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Amelia Zelko so much.
But is she a difficult woman?
Oh, in like the best ways. Yeah. I just completely adore her. And yeah, so it was really sad because I just feel like I learned so much about these women, and it's also wrestling with the fact that they're like missing.
Yeah.
So there's like this dual part of it, but can't wait to tell you about Amelia. She was a force. And to say that the list of people who liked Amelia Zelko was shorter than the list of people who wanted her dead would be an understatement.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, so you fell in love with this woman who not many people fell in love with.
Yeah, but you're going to find out why.
Okay.
She is not well liked. Now, Amelia, she also went by the nickname Molly, so you're going to hear that name as well.
Okay.
So she was often described as a bulldog reporter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, though most of her written pieces for the weekly newspaper, The Spectator, were just scathing indictments of what she saw as political corruption, graft, and the influence of crime syndicates on gambling machines in Will County, specifically the town of Joliet in which she lived.
Okay, I already have a strong feeling of why you love her and why a lot of people hate her.
Yeah, now, for months, Amelia had felt like she was being followed, and she likely was, because on the night of September 25th, 1957, Amelia Zelko left the offices of The Spectator to drive her 3-minute commute home. Later, neighbors would report hearing screams, but they attributed it to local teenagers causing a ruckus outside. Little did they know that they would be the last anyone heard of Amelia. Now, Amelia's story is one of corruption, greed, and the search for the truth. Her disappearance, which at the time captured the attention of the FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and Robert F. Kennedy, then the head of the Senate Rackets Committee, has all but faded since the years have passed. Now, as such, her story lives on in podcasts like ours and poems like the one you'll hear at the end of the episode. But the people who have worked continuously on Amelia's story are reporters John Whiteside and Lonnie Kane, and then also Greg Pierbolt, who is the CEO of the Joliet Area Historical Museum. Now, Whiteside, he passed away never knowing what happened to Amelia. Lonnie has continued to write about Amelia and plans on completing a book about her case. And Greg has created a limited podcast series called The Spectator about Molly's disappearance. And I hope our listeners will be inspired to learn more about her and follow their leads. As fair warning, before we begin, this is one of our rare 2-parts episodes because Amelia Zelko's story has so many layers that it was just completely impossible to contain it to just one.
And that's why you wanted to get straight to it.
I do. Yeah.
It's a long one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of information here. So let's forge forward.
Sounds good.
Now, Amelia was born in 1910 to Frank and Johanna Zelko, who were immigrants from Yugoslavia. Reporters say she was one of 6 children, and I think she was actually one of 7, but regardless, it was a large family. Her dad, Frank, worked as a steelworker, and the whole family settled into Joliet, Illinois, which was known as the City of Steel specifically because of the steel industry. Now, at just 17, Amelia begins working as a secretary for a man named William McCabe, who's vitally important to this entire story. At the time, he was a 42-year-old lawyer. When McCabe became the state's attorney in 1932, Amelia went with him, taking on the job as his office manager. And Amelia was fiercely loyal to McCabe. Someone would later say, "You've heard of a one-man dog? Why, Molly was a one-man woman. She would bite anyone McCabe didn't like. You couldn't separate the two."
So she's just 17 years old and she's protective of this employer who's 42.
Yeah.
That's kind of, yeah. So she's always had like grit.
Yes. Now, this is true. Like, she is fiercely defendant of him. Now, McCabe, he lost his bid for re-election in 1936. And when that happened, he purchased a weekly newspaper in Joliet known as the Spectator. Now, Amelia went with him again. Amelia was often described as the office manager or the secretary/treasurer of the Spectator, but her role was actually much deeper than that. With the move to the newspaper, McCabe actually gave Amelia 1/3 of the company, so 33 shares specifically. He wanted her to help him revive the paper both in terms of scope and in terms of finances. And for this, her weekly pay would be $20, which, if you're wondering, shakes out to be about $25,000 a year in today's money, which honestly is what a lot of small town newspaper workers are still making today.
So it's not a lot of money, but he gave her 1/3 of the company.
Yes.
And this is in the 1930s, you said?
Yes.
And he's trusting a young woman to do this. So
Yeah, he's
I don't know about
McCabe,
McCabe, but like, is it safe to say that he's a pretty good guy?
I mean, I think he's everyone here is complicated, but
Okay, because I'm like, when you start seeing that, I'm like, wait, did he ever try anything?
Oh yeah.
Like, is this purely a business relationship, or are we experiencing a little bit of romantic feelings towards this young girl?
Right.
What is happening?
What's happening between them?
Right.
It's not explicitly clear in any of the information that I found. He is married, not that means anything.
Right, because I hate to be like, oh, this is a really good guy. Like, he really sounds like he's like boosting this woman and her career and like putting a lot of confidence in this young woman. I don't want to say that if he's also like expecting things outside of the job.
I will say in my research, like, that was not made explicit in any way. So
one way or another, we just don't know. So we can't accuse him of doing that, but we also can't be like, he didn't.
Yeah. Like, I can say Amelia never married and McCabe was with his wife the entire time. So.
Okay.
Now, McCabe believed his goal with the Spectator was to fight against corruption, not just in Joliet or Will County, but the entire state. And it would be impossible to sum up all of what was happening at the time. This is really central to Amelia's story. At the time in Joliet, basically everyone seemed to be on the take. There were questions about everything from the mayor's office to the police force to local contractors to business establishments, and McCabe believed that he could use the Spectator to reveal these stories. This didn't make the paper or McCabe popular with local politicians, authorities, and what was described as the Joliet Mafia. And well, Joliet Mafia seems kind of quaint, like some like local toughs or anything. Mm-hmm. Like, Joliet's proximity to Chicago meant we're actually talking about the Mafia.
So the Joliet Mafia is simply a branch of the Mafia.
Right.
So we're just going to consider it the same thing.
Yeah. So like, maybe not necessarily like the top guys, but this is like legit organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 1948, William McCabe, he at this point is 65 years old, and he was running for a position as a select councilman in Joliet against an incumbent, a man named Alfred Shupp, who McCabe saw as a longtime foe. On the night of April 8, 1948, McCabe left his home to drive to a hotel to meet friends. Along the way, another vehicle forced his car to a stop. McCabe would later say that two men got out of the car, forcing him into the bench seat. He's sandwiched between these two men, and a third man followed in their vehicle. He said they drove for a little bit before the men pulled over, dragged him from the car where he was beaten with clubs. It was only because of an approaching motorist that the men stopped and dashed back to their own car.
Wow, so he almost didn't make it through that encounter.
Yeah, and when I say he was brutally beaten, like, he did survive, but the attack was so brutal that his legs were broken, along with one arm. He had a skull fracture.
Oh, wow. So, like, how did he even manage to...
Yeah.
Was he actually, like, bedridden?
Yes. So he would spend almost the next year confined to bed in the hospital. And really, for the remainder of his life, he spent time in and out of the hospital due to, like, pain and complications from his injuries. And to cope with this excessive pain, he would often, at this point in his life, turn to alcohol. Now, after the attack, Amelia was left to run the paper without McCabe and generally took on a lot of the roles that had previously been his. So, running editorials, giving assignments, looking over proofs, and approving things for publication. No one had been arrested in the attack against McCabe, but Amelia had her suspicions. She thought a man named Francis Curry was responsible. Curry had undeniable mob ties. I mean, he was known as the Thin Man. I feel like anytime a man gets the nickname name, the
Yeah,
Thin
like the
Man.
something man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And he had links to people like Al and Ralph Capone.
Okay.
Now, Curry, it was said, largely ran the legal and illegal gambling businesses in the county, and he'd previously warned McCabe to drop out of the race for councilman.
Okay.
Now, but the attack against McCabe didn't end the violence against the Spectator offices. Reportedly, their offices were shot at, and in 1953, 3 men hurled bricks through the Spectator's plate glass windows. No one was arrested for those crimes either. But Amelia had a pretty good idea who exactly the Spectator was up against, and it was terrifying. In a letter that she wrote that same year, she said, "Everything since that night seems terrifying, and not one day since, can I say, has been a happy one. Everything in life seems to center around that night, and each day brings more sorrow and grief because of that night." Now, despite her fears, Amelia was not about to back down. The Spectator kept on launching full-scale attacks, often against gambling industries that were largely mafia-controlled. The paper actually led a campaign against pinball machines.
Wait, did you make an error there?
Oh, pinball machines. No, this is so fascinating.
Wait, what does pinball machines have to do with gambling
Gambling?
industries?
Okay. I had hoped you would ask. Okay. Because
You knew I would ask.
I did, but
especially because you always have a way of just slipping something in there in the most odd way possible, or it's just yeah, I'm just gonna just tuck this in there and see what
she'll say.
What she says.
You can't not ask about pinball machines.
Okay.
So previously, I've thought about pinball machines as just those arcade games, right? Because that's what they are.
It's like a classic arcade game, right?
Yeah. So in our lifetime, that is what pinball machines are. But in Amelia's time, pinball machines did not have the flippers. The little things that you move.
That's the whole, how do you play it without the flippers?
Okay, so before it was just a game of chance. Release the ball and
Release the ball and watch it? Helplessly?
Kind of, yeah. So their games of chance and wagers and bets would be made.
So it was a gambling game where you just had to wait.
Yeah.
No skill involved.
Well, I mean, think of slot machines now.
Yeah, I guess it is absolutely.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they were, right? So it's a game of chance. And that would lead to the outlawing of them in many towns.
Okay.
Now, I know you're about to ask about this. I will tell you, though. So pinballs and jukeboxes were part of the mafia-controlled gambling empire in the Chicagoland area. Are you about to ask me about jukeboxes?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait. Okay. So we already covered. Okay. Pinballs are part of gambling. Gambling is controlled by the mafia.
Yes.
Get it. Jukeboxes.
Okay. So a jukebox.
Right. Are we going to keep doing this? Are there more things you're going to just tell me about randomly?
I feel like I would be really good at trivia at this point. Okay. So a jukebox, you're selling an ephemeral product, right? Like a song, a listen, not even a song.
You're selling a momentary thing, yeah.
Right. So inventorying plays was impossible back then. Nothing's digital, right? Which means records could be falsified in terms of how much a song was listened to. So you could launder money through jukeboxes.
So you would pretend the jukeboxes are more popular?
Yeah, so
or that a song on it is being used more?
Yeah, did you listen to the song 10 times? Did you listen to the song 100 times? Who's to say? Except the person inventorying it, right? Which is the owner.
And there's no way to prove it.
Yeah. So you could launder money through jukeboxes.
Okay. Okay. So
this is the era in which Amelia is
So are we fighting against the jukeboxes too, or just the pinball machine?
Okay, so she's against the pinballs specifically, right? Particularly in Joliet, where the council ends up successfully banning pinballs, despite the mayor at the time voting in favor of keeping them. Now, because Francis Curry was leading the local gambling districts, he was often Amelia's target. When the Currys hosted an event at their house, she drove around the block several times collecting license plate numbers to document who was at the Currys' house. And then she wrote a scathing editorial criticizing another local paper for covering the event in their society pages. Amelia alleged that it should have been covered as a mafia/crime event.
Okay, so I think I've never, ever, ever, ever said anything remotely near this in any episode before, but I'm actually expecting her to go missing.
Oh, yeah.
She's doing some risky things.
She is. Yeah.
It's definitely not her fault, but she is doing the things that I would be like, yeah, I could see this person going missing. All the other stories you tell me, I'm like, just listening along and like learning about them, and then all of a sudden I'm just very surprised that they go missing. I don't know why, but it happens. Now I'm just waiting for her to go missing because she's messing with very scary people.
Yeah. And you can see like the list of people who don't like her is growing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just the office itself or McCabe alone that are under scrutiny and a threat. So, like, by going after these people, you're right. Like, Amelia has set herself up as an adversary.
Mm-hmm.
The threat itself is very real. Now, Amelia confided to friends that she thought she was being followed. One friend, I believe it's her friend Alice, said that Amelia called her one night and asked her to come to the Spectator. "I'm in trouble and I'm afraid I'm going to get my head blown off," Amelia allegedly said. We'll be back in a moment. Alice would later say that she went to see Amelia at the offices of the Spectator one night in what I believe was maybe the same incident. It's very unclear. Alice suspected that there was a car following her on the way there. Alice slipped inside and she and Amelia watched two men park their car a short distance away. The men turned off their car lights, and to Alice and Amelia, it seemed like they were being watched, looking through the windows of the Spectator, right? Now, Amelia and Alice slipped out the back of the Spectator and made their way to a vehicle. From there, they drove straight to the home of C.H. Peterson, who's going to be mentioned a few times.
Okay. And who is C.H. Peterson?
So Peterson is the chairman of the Will County Central Republican Committee. He'd spoken to Amelia several times about how going after the mafia and gambling was putting her in jeopardy, and he cautioned her to tone down her aggressive stance.
Yeah.
She was like, not happening.
No.
So,
I mean, he's not wrong.
But who if not Amelia?
Well, he can't tell her what she should or shouldn't do, but he could tell her that she is putting herself in jeopardy.
And I bet Amelia was like, yeah, dude, I know. Right?
Yeah, but she doesn't care. Amelia,
she does not care. No. So she doesn't back down. And despite revealing to Peterson that she had started to worry that a bomb could be attached to the starter of her car. Now, Peterson begged Amelia to stop working at night, but she was dedicated to the paper and to revealing the corruption that was taking place. So instead of listening to him, she just dug in deeper.
There's two ways that can go, right?
Right. Now, apparently, Amelia had mastered the art of recording phone calls and conversations looking for political graft. Around this time, there was controversy surrounding a public works project in the city of Joliet. The plan was to spend several $1 million on a storm sewer project, and that had been approved by the city council. Amelia caught wind that some of the contractors were planning on throwing the bid, basically planning together to rig the bid process. Allegedly, Amelia had a recording of them talking about doing this. They wanted to submit higher bids in order to make sure that the contract went to a different contractor, which seems illegal, but understandable if you think they're doing it to help the other guy out, but it takes on a completely different meaning if you realize that they're doing it to get some sort of kickback, right? And this is really firmed up by the fact that the mayor of Joliet, Arthur Jenke, was indicted for tax evasion for not paying taxes on the money he was making on kickbacks. Jenke had only received a 1-year probation for this, which called into question whether or not the judicial system in Joliet could be trusted. And for Amelia, that answer is no. And she wrote a scathing editorial in which she said that this level of punishment was akin to receiving 10 lashes with a piece of macaroni. Now, in the case against Jenke, though, it was revealed that some of the kickbacks that he was getting was from an oil company. Partners in this company were none other than Alfred Shupp, who had been the chairman for the Will County Republicans before Peterson. And you may remember him as the man that William McCabe was running against for councilman when McCabe was attacked. The other was Edward Walsh, who was the Democratic leader. At the time that all this came to surface, Walsh was backing a man named Otto Weber for sheriff in the next election. Allegedly, Amelia compelled Otto Weber from running for sheriff, threatening to run a smear campaign against him in the Spectator if he persisted in running. So if you're wondering at this point, she has gone after the mayor.
Yeah, I'm still processing here for a minute because, like, okay, how many things is she uncovering at once?
Right, yes, she's gone after everyone. Like the mayor, heads of the other, like, political parties, right? Councilmen. She's gone after contractors. She's gone after the guy running for sheriff, right? Like, there is nobody that she's not.
Right. She's not like picking a lane, right? Like, we're going all over the place here. That's why I was just like thinking back through everything you just said, and there's a lot.
Yeah. So, like, there is no possible way that Amelia was going to heed Peterson's warning and back down. Not when there was corruption at every layer, from mayor to law enforcement, judiciary, and, like, behind the scenes, you know, the mafia.
Right. We're going after basically everybody.
Uh-huh.
Both sides of the law.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Now, September 25th, 1957 was a Wednesday, and like every Wednesday, Amelia and the team at the Spectator were preparing to get the weekly Thursday issue out. Amelia arrived at the office early, around 7 a.m. She was so busy working on the issue that she sent out for her lunch and ate in the office. Much of the afternoon, though, she spent on the phone. Amelia, she actually shared an inner office with McCabe, who understandably didn't seem to be physically present there in those days. And that summer on July 2nd, she'd actually had a private unlisted phone number installed in that office. And it's likely that she was using that line all afternoon.
Was that primarily to talk to him on and like...
No, so it seems to be like that's where she could take phone calls from people who were giving her the inside scoop on stuff.
Okay.
Now, when she finally leaves the inner office around 5:30 p.m. that evening, one of the staff quipped to her, "You've had quite the afternoon." And Amelia replied, "Yes, I've just been fighting a case."
Do we know which case that one is?
No idea. Could be any.
We will never know. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it could be so many things.
Now, when Amelia stepped out to get a bacon sandwich for dinner, the phone kept ringing. Staff said that 6 different calls came in on the line. Since it was the phone in the inner office, none of them answered it. After all, that's Amelia's space. When Amelia got back, she went over the page proofs, approving all but the front page, which she said she would look at in the morning before it went to print. 10 minutes before she was about to leave, the phone rang again. One of the staff, thinking she couldn't hear it, said, "Molly, your phone is ringing." But Amelia made no move to answer it. She simply said, "I know who it is, and I don't want to talk to him."
Does that have anything to do with the case she was fighting?
I don't know.
It's so funny because we don't know anything about the case she's fighting. We don't know anything about this guy on the phone, but we know exactly what kind of sandwich she got.
Yes, specifically a bacon sandwich. Now, just before she left, she said goodbye to John Walsh, who was working at the office as a printer. She said that she would see him in the morning. John said that she sounded cheerful, and usually Amelia would ask one of the men from the press room to follow her home. It was one of those extra precautions that she decided to take. But on this night, she didn't ask for accompaniment. She just headed out to her black 1955 Chrysler and drove away. From there, some of Amelia's movements do get murky. Some think she headed straight home. It was just a 3-minute drive from the Spectator to her second-floor apartment in an old Queen Anne on West Buell Street. But later, in 1978, when reporters John Whiteside and Lonnie Kane were working on a series of articles about Amelia, they were contacted by a bartender who had seen their series in the paper. The bartender said that he was sure Amelia came in that night and got a drink before making 2 phone calls from the payphone that was in the hallway. The bartender had never spoken to police about this incident back when it happened, but he was moved to do so when he saw Whiteside and Kane's articles. He said his wife kept nagging him to share what he knew in case it helped. But what we do know is that somewhere around 11:40 p.m. to midnight, the neighbors near Amelia's apartment heard a woman scream, saying, "Oh no, no," and then the squealing of tires as a car took off, and then silence. Some that heard it looked out the window to see what was going on, but no one went out to check. There'd been loud teenagers in the neighborhood, and it wasn't exactly unusual to hear loud noises at night, so they dismissed it as just a few teens out causing a ruckus, and they all went to bed. Around 12:15 a.m., a man walking along West Beale Street spotted a lone high-heeled shoe on the ground. He picked it up and placed it on the trunk of a nearby Chrysler and continued on his way. The next morning, staff members called Amelia's apartment at 5:15 a.m. It was the general rule that they would call her in the morning to wake her up on Thursday mornings, and Amelia didn't answer. A little while later, they placed a second call, again without success. Noting that this was unusual for Amelia, two of the staff members who worked as printers headed over to her apartment around 6 a.m. There, on the back of her car, was one of Amelia's shoes. Nearby in the grass was the other. They knew something was wrong. Their first call was to Amelia's older sister, Joanna. But at 11 a.m. that morning, one of Amelia's brothers, joined by a woman who worked as a proofreader and an ad salesman and a locksmith, converged on Amelia's apartment. When they entered, Amelia wasn't there, and it seemed clear that she had not slept in her apartment the night before. Now, William McCabe, who was still a forceful presence in the lives of everyone involved, was the one who called the police. At this point, it was very clear that Amelia was gone, but what had happened to her? The investigation soon revealed that the neighbors had heard the scream and heard the car, but no one had directly witnessed anything or saw anything that night that would help the police ascertain what had happened and if something had happened to Amelia. Amelia at this point was simply gone, and everyone had theories. There seemed to be no clear leads in town, where a lot of people had reason to wish that Amelia would just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, over at the Spectator, the headline for the day's paper wasn't whatever Amelia had planned for that day. Instead, splashed across the top of the page in bold font was the headline, "Amelia Zelko Kidnapped." Without Amelia running the paper, there was concern over who would be in charge. McCabe certainly wasn't up to the task. McCabe had just recently spent time in the hospital, something that he had done regularly again since the attack. While he was there, McCabe actually had an unusual across-the-hall neighbor. Records show that Amelia was also admitted to the hospital and spent nearly a month there shortly before she disappeared. Those who knew her said that this wasn't unusual behavior for Amelia. She'd developed a habit of checking herself into local hospitals or sanatoriums when she felt like she needed a rest.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, this seems to be coming out of nowhere. So he would just check himself into the hospital because he's in pain, right?
Yeah.
But she had been his across the hall neighbor, and he did not know that?
No, he knew that.
Oh,
yeah.
He knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but so it's just sort of her.
He knew that, so she would just check herself in sometimes as well?
Yeah,
Did you do that?
Really odd because you would not be able to do that today.
You can't just do that now, yeah. So I guess it's...
Yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes I wish that I could just take a little break.
Check yourself into a little hospital.
Just
take a little break.
Some sleep, some books, But yeah, so she would, do this. She'd get a break from her responsibilities for a few weeks, right? Now, Amelia's presence so close to McCabe didn't necessarily sit well with his two daughters, Jean Oliver and Mary Lou Lowry. Jean and Mary Lou were not fans of Amelia, so we can add them to the list of people who didn't like her. In fact, there were rumors that at least one of them had gotten into a fist fight complete with hair pulling in the past with Amelia.
Huh.
Now...
So when she's going to the hospital, she's just staying there for the month?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's also a great way to stay safe if you think someone's after you.
Right. Now.
Okay, so and then fist fights with one of the daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, whether or not the fistfights are true, what is true is that McCabe's daughters very much had reason to dislike Amelia. When McCabe had bought the paper in 1936, again, he had given her the 1/3 share in the paper, which is a substantial amount.
Mm-hmm.
He retained controlling interest, but it certainly was a huge bonus for her. By the time 1957 rolled around, though, the ownership dynamic had changed. McCabe's shares were now at 48%, Amelia's at 48%.
Mm-hmm.
That left them equal partners. The remaining 4 shares were actually split up. One was owned by a mutual friend of both McCabe and Amelia. The remaining 3 were held in a trust. Upon the death of either Amelia or McCabe, the shares would be distributed to the survivor. Given the age difference between the two and McCabe's health issues, the assumption had always been that Amelia would end up the owner at McCabe's death.
God, they had it really worked out.
Yeah. Now, That would have actually cut McCabe's daughters and his wife out from inheriting or benefiting from the paper. Now, Amelia's disappearance, that actually left the issue of ownership in limbo. If she's dead, that means that McCabe would have inherited her shares. But with her only missing, there was this long legal process before she could be declared dead. McCabe's daughters, Jean and Mary Lou, descended on the office of the Spectator, declaring that they were going to look over the financial records of the paper. There had been rumors swirling that Amelia might have been keeping two books, one with legit finances and one with more questionable finances. After all, between 1947 and 1956, Amelia's salary at the paper ranged from just under $5,000 to just over $7,000 per year. But she owned furs, a nice coat. She had a great car.
So how's that happening, right?
Yeah. And somehow she was in possession of a 17.5 carat diamond ring.
Oh.
A ring that had been on display at the 1933 World's Fair for its size.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah, so many believe that she was living far outside what were her financial means and, what could have been done on her salary. Meanwhile, McCabe's lawyer submitted a document that stated that the agreement between Amelia and McCabe had been revoked in May of that year. McCabe had alleged that he had been under undue influence with Amelia at the time the agreement was signed. He said he wished to break the agreement in order to protect the financial interests of his family. Now, whatever McCabe thought about the agreement, it seems to me that he had been stuck between a rock and a hard place, kind of, On the one side, you've got, Amelia, who's been a steadfast supporter of him and a presence in his life for 30 years at this point, and on the other side is his family. That doesn't mean McCabe was happy to be rid of Amelia. Just like Amelia had suspected Frank the Thin Man Curry of being the person responsible for the attack on McCabe, McCabe also started pointing his finger at Curry as being responsible for Amelia's disappearance. He petitioned the FBI multiple times to investigate Amelia's disappearance, but each time the FBI said from their assessment there was no clear evidence that a kidnapping occurred and declined to get involved.
There's a lot of holes in the story. Like you said, Amelia's financial situation, whether or not her and McCabe had anything else going on. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brewing under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the Spectator offices, McCabe's daughters are unable to find any issues with the finances at the Spectator. Everything it was said was accounted for down to the penny. So it's not that she was getting some cooking the books at the paper. Right?
Okay.
Now, in February of 1958, Amelia's brothers, her sister, and her father petitioned the court that a receiver be appointed to administer Amelia's estate, essentially with the ownership of the paper in question as well as access to her financial holdings blocked. This was a step that would allow them to make some financial decisions on her behalf. A man named Eugene Cole was assigned to be the administrator of her estate. On August 13th, 1958, almost 1 year after Amelia disappeared, William McCabe died at St. Joseph's Hospital. Eugene Cole elected to sell Mrs. William McCabe Amelia's shares of the paper, and the proceeds of this were added to Amelia's estate. By 1963, the Spectator was considered to be in decline, and the McCabe family decided to sell it. 2 years later, the paper was shuttered officially, ending what McCabe and Amelia had set out to do with the weekly. In the 68 years since Amelia went missing, her story has contained many twists and turns. It's filled with confessions and witnesses who have kept quiet, the dig for her body on a remote farm, and current speculation about just where Amelia is. No one seems to agree, but what almost everyone felt certain from the start is that Amelia Zelko did not survive whatever she encountered that night outside her apartment. In next week's episode, we're going to cover more for the search for Amelia and where it is today.
We are now going to listen to Amy's poem, Philomena, The Goose Girl, and All the Rest, about Amelia Zelko, 47, missing since September 25, 1957, from Joliet, Illinois, read by Taylor Meskimen. Born in New York and raised in Los Angeles, Taylor is a multifaceted actress and artist, well-versed across a variety of creative fields with professional accomplishments in theater, film, music, and television. Taylor has been performing live for over a decade at venues throughout Los Angeles, when she hasn't been in recording studios, voicing characters for animation and commercials. She has also won awards for her audiobook narrations and has over 130 audiobooks available on Audible. No stranger to artistry and hard work, talent, and success run in Taylor's blood. She is the granddaughter of television star Marion Ross, best known for her role alongside Ron Howard in the hit TV series Happy Days. Taylor's parents are also both professional actors, and her mother runs one of the top acting schools in Los Angeles, the Acting Center.
They say it's divine punishment, the cutting out of a tongue, the transformation of a woman into a bird, her voice reduced to a song that no human can understand. Listen, they'll say. The birds are ushering in the dawn with their chorus. What if we imagine the choir is all the women who can no longer speak? Each rustle of a wing, their slim hands reaching out to grasp our own. Each song a lament that our ears are not designed to hear. A tragedy. We'd sigh if we knew, instead of asking why in every version of the story, there are those who crave our words. The cold clap of their hands across our mouths, the clatter of our keys growing still. What transformation might happen if we asked why this silencing is in every tale we are told?
For more information about our show or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.